So the First Descendant is a game built around efficient farming. When you need a couple dozen items to craft a Descendant or an ultimate weapon, or if you have to go farm a rare module that then you have to upgrade with both gold and Kuiper, and then you have to go farm other materials to craft other rare items to be able to upgrade the module capacity on your Descendant to use that new module, all of that pushes the focus of the game being on efficient farming. But there's actually a handful of ways that you can buff basically every farm in this game by a pretty substantial amount. And to just get it out of the way, the first way to boost all of your drops is just by buying the boost you can get from the shop. You can get a 30% increase in gold drops, a 30% increase in Kuiper shard drops, a 30% increase in the experience your Descendant gets, and a 30% increase in your weapon proficiency experience. And all of those boosts can be purchased in durations of 3 days all the way up to 30 days. The developers do also seem to be willing to just give out these boosts, because if you played the first couple of days, you may have seen that the developers just gave everybody multiple 3-day boosts of a lot of these boosts just for the servers having issues and things like that. So if you're looking for a paid way to boost some of these elements, you can do that through the shop. You can also find my creator code in the description if you plan on purchasing anything in the First Descendant. I'm not recommending you to buy anything or not to buy anything, but if you already plan on doing that, use my creator code. It'll help out the channel. Now, looking past the shop, we have the in-game way that you're able to boost most of the elements you're going to be looking for, and that's what this video is primarily focused on. And this is going to come from your external components, this being your auxiliary power, your sensors, your memory, and your processors. And all 4 of these items can actually have 2 different modifiers that increase certain drops or experience increases to different things you're going to be farming in the game. And these boosts are as follows. On your auxiliary power items, you can get Kuiper shard drop rate increase, and you can get a module drop rate increase. On your sensors, you can get an increase to your character experience, and you can get an increase to the consumable drop rate, which is pretty much every material in the game. Anything in the consumable tab, this should increase the drop rate of. Then for your memory, you can get an increase to the gold drop rate, and you can get an increase to your firearm proficiency gains. And then finally, for your processor, you can get an increase to the item acquisition distance. This one seems to be the least useful because this just seems to be an increase to the distance you pick up items, which really isn't too valuable. But then you can also get an increase to the equipment drop rate, which seems to be any gear piece. This seems to be an increase to reactors, external components, and weapons. And these work in a similar way to all of the other stats in the game, so they can roll at different rarities up to ultimate rarity, meaning for all of these boosts, you can get better and better rolls until you get really good rolls in the ultimate category. And I did also want to go over the highest rolls I've seen and what I think the caps of these rolls are. And keep in mind when going over all of these numbers, these are a multiplicative increase to these drop rates. So they may seem like low numbers, but these are actually quite substantial. So for your auxiliary power, the highest roll I've personally obtained for an increase for Kuiper shard drops is 0.163, so a 16% increase. And I think the cap is probably around 0.17, so a 17% increase in Kuiper shard drops. Then you have an increase in module drop rates. This one is actually very important. And the highest I've seen is 0.198, so right off a 19% increase. And I think the cap is probably around 19%. That one is probably going to be one that's much more valuable than you may think. Then on the sensor, you can get an increase to your character experience gains. The highest I've seen is 0.191, so around a 19% increase, and the cap is probably around 0.2, so around a 20% increase. And then for consumable drop rate increases, the highest I've seen is 0.184, so this is probably around 0.19, so a 19% increase as well. Then for your memory, you have an increase to gold drop rates. The highest I've seen is 0.167, and this wasn't an ultimate roll, so the cap on this is probably around 0.19 as well, so a 19% increase. And then you also have an increase to the firearm proficiency gains. The highest I've seen is 0.175. That one also wasn't an ultimate roll. So the cap on this is probably 0.19 or 0.2, so a 19 to 20% increase. Then finally, for your processor, the highest I've seen for item acquisition distance is 0.244. So the cap is probably 0.25, 25% increase. Again, I don't think that stat is actually very valuable. But then for the equipment drop rate increase, the highest I personally obtained is 0.172. And I don't think that was an ultimate roll either. So again, probably a cap of 0.19 for a 19% increase. And again, keep in mind, these are a percentage multiplier. So these are going to be a pretty substantial increase into whatever they're buffing. Now, there is an issue with these boosts being on your external components, because you may think after looking at this, why would I ever have external components that don't have boosts on them? And the main reason is because you get a majority of your base defenses from all of your different external components. That being things like shield increases, health increases, defense increases, and resistance increases. And the defenses you get on these items are much more important than I think a lot of people realize, because I think a lot of people go to their Descendant modules and they see you can get a card with like 200% increased health or 150% increased shield, or get hundreds of percents of increased defenses, and you think, oh, that's the majority of my defensive power comes from my modules. But those modules with the big percentages on them are based upon your base defensive stats, and your external components give you those base defensive stat increases. So if you're keeping track, if you go get the boosts from the shop and you use the boost to all the different elements through all of your external components, you can get around a 50% boost in almost everything you can farm in the First Descendant. You can get gold boost, Kuiper shard boost, experience boost, item drop boost, pretty much anything you could farm, you can get pretty massive boosts in. So if you've been running around trying to farm some specific rare items and you just haven't been lucky enough to be able to get them, go to your external components, look for increases to that item you're farming, equip that, and you'll definitely get whatever you're farming more quickly using the boosts that are available to you. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.